welcome to Earth Talks with the Observer Research Foundation. This is the show where we look at wildlife and biodiversity issues in depth every week. I have with me today Cara Tejpal from the Sanctuary Nature Foundation. Cara, you actually set up the Mud on Boots program, and this is for grassroots conservationists. Take us through how this idea came up and what have you been able to achieve so far?
So, I grew up in awe of wildlife conservationists, but mostly the people whose books I was reading. And my idea of wildlife conservation was centered around a kind of very first world narrative. As I grew older and I started exploring conservation in India and I started traveling, I began to see this huge amount of work being undertaken and being carried out on the ground in the field. But it wasn't really recognized, it wasn't really supported. When I joined Sanctuary, it was a discussion I often had with Bittu, and then in 2016, a banker named Paul Abraham came to Sanctuary and said that he would like to support conservation initiatives in honor of his late wife, Tina Abraham. At that point, we instituted something called the Tina Grant, which was in conjunction with Sanctuary. And it was very simple. It was a simple monetary grant given to 3 grassroots conservationists. At the end of this grant period, at the end of 2 years, I started to put out a call for nominations for the next round of funding, and I was inundated. Every wildlife conservationist I knew, every researcher I knew someone in the field who did not kind of fit the mold of an individual who was usually given grants, but was doing incredible work. And I think that kind of it was from the Tina Grant and from this kind of amazing feedback that we got that the Mud on Boots project was born.
Okay, and where are you today? How many people have you supported so far? What kind of species, what kind of landscape?
So we're still a very young project. We're just in our 3rd year. In the last 2 years, we supported about 13 project leaders across the country. I think in 9 different states of India. This year we took on six new project leaders. Species differ. We had Anoko Mega in Arunachal Pradesh who was working with the Eastern Hollow Gibbon. We had Rajiv in UP who was working on the Gharial. We had Ursa in Rajasthan who was working for the protection of the GIB.
Again, all great Indian bustard.
That's the great Indian bustard. All grassroots conservationists, all working at a community level. All so incredibly motivated. I really want to kind of underscore that what we do is simply provide a boost. These are individuals who are already doing the work who, with or without our support, would be taking this forward. And what we provide them is a little bit of financial support, and then we fill in the gaps. You know, there are...
So when you say gaps, what does that mean? Does that mean access to policymakers? Would that mean, you know, their communication needs?
Anything. It depends on the project site and the project leader. So I'll give you an example. Right here in Haryana, in the Faridabad area in Mangar Bani, we're supporting a gentleman named Sunil Harsana. Sunil is from the Mangar community and he is very invested in the protection of this forest, which is very vulnerable to encroachment currently.
So this is just as a reference to our viewers, this is a forest just outside Delhi where it's part of the Aravalis, but it's been under a lot of dispute because a lot of land sharks want to take possession of it.
So Sunil has been working with children from his community. They go on nature walks every week. They collect native seeds, they create a seed bank, and then in the monsoon they plant these seeds. So we kind of connected the dots between Sunil and an artist called Laboni Roy. Laboni went to visit Sunil and now she's created a guidebook of the native species of Mangar for him to use and distribute to the kids who visit. So that's one thing. Then, for example, in Maharashtra, there's an amazing young man named Malhar Indulkar who's working to protect riverine tracts and sacred groves. So Malhar wanted some expert help to identify the different species of flora in a couple of sacred groves. So we managed to contact a botanist named Prajakta, and Prajakta went down and spent 3 days doing rapid assessments of the flora. So, like I said, it depends on the need of the project leader. Wherever they feel they're lacking or they want some guidance, we try to step in.
So, Mud on Boots is very typically, as the name symbolizes, it's a grassroots program.
Yes, absolutely.
How are you different from other grant-giving organizations? I know a lot of other conservation groups, they do give out money. So, how are you different?
Well, I think the Mud on Boots project is very unique because it targets a very non-academic audience. There are plenty of opportunities available to all, I'm just going to use the word elite conservationists. That's English speaking, well educated, you know, research based, get the chance to come on YouTube channels like this.
Oh God, but no, we interview a lot of grassroots people as well, but go on.
You know what I mean.
Yeah.
But so we don't look at, for example, academic qualifications. We don't require that. We don't require intensive monitoring in terms of filling out forms and giving us data and this constant quantifying of impact. I think the impact we're looking at is so long term that my focus and our project's focus is on just doing the good work and then seeing how it plays out in the future.
Right. So give us an example of particularly an endangered species you may have, the work you may have supported. And I know impacts is difficult because conservation work is typically plays out over 40, 50 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or perhaps even 100 years. But something which you felt had an immediate impact because of the support that you gave it.
Okay, so there's a very interesting conservation initiative that our project leader named Joydev Pradhan, he's a senior citizen in the Howrah district of West Bengal. This is fishing cat area. It's all wetland area. But historically and over the past few decades, there's been a lot of friction between the fishing community and the fishing cat. And that's resulted in retaliatory killings. So with support from the Mud on Boots project and with guidance from the Fishing Cat project and biologists from the Fishing Cat project, what Joydev did was he used the funds to create a seed goat reserve. What that means is he purchased a number of goats and a number of pregnant goats, and he distributed them to families that had previously lost goats to the fishing cat, with the understanding that whenever the goat gives birth, that baby, that kid, comes back into the goat bank. So it's a self-replenishing bank.
And the fishing cat feeds on goats.
Yeah, I was really surprised to learn this too.
One would think that
because the goats in that area are very tiny. And once the bank was established and it's completely run by the community, the false reportings also went down, and retaliatory killings have also dropped drastically.
Right. And this kind of funding they could not have got from any other foundation, because a lot of other foundations ask for, as you said, lengthy reports and a lot of huge budgetary demands.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there must be organizations that do it. I just don't think they're very common, and I think the kind of network that Sanctuary has is another thing that makes this project exceptional. It means we're reaching out to people who might never have been able to access such an opportunity otherwise.
So this is a project which is housed under Sanctuary Magazine, Sanctuary Foundation.
So now we're the Sanctuary Nature Foundation. Sanctuary Magazine is also housed under the Sanctuary Nature Foundation, as is the Mud on Boots project.
And Sanctuary was probably, it's been a pioneer. It was probably the first wildlife magazine that this country had. We all grew up reading the magazine. So it seems but only natural that they would progress into this. But tell me, I mean, it can't be all that simple. There may be challenges as well. How do you raise your funds? Is there ever a time when you have to say no to somebody because a polluting company may come forward and say, we'd like to give you pots of money?
Absolutely. There are so many challenges. Funds is a huge hurdle. Like I said, because we're quite a unique, flexible project, we customize according to the needs of the project leader, we don't force them to fit into our box. We don't really take corporate funding. So most of our funds is raised through individuals who kind of understand that they're not going to be getting a shiny report every month, but they're going to get updates that are inspiring to them. So yes, fundraising is always a challenge. Luckily, I have found amazing and generous donors who support the project. Beyond that, I think before we started the project, I didn't understand how deeply interconnected everything is. I'm not just talking about biodiversity and the environment, I'm talking about poverty, I'm talking about literacy, I'm talking about hunger. These are all things that impact various project leaders in different parts of the country. And you can see how that affects their work too. So these are challenges we weren't really prepared for, and now we're suddenly having to tackle.
Right. Is that a challenge? Is that like sometimes a difficulty, because you want to go out and save the species or the forest, but there are real human problems there. So do you sometimes feel, okay, let's put this aside and deal with the human problem at the moment?
Yes, 100%. I think the humanity of it is at the very foundation of the project. In fact, in a strange way, this is more a social project than it is a wildlife project. The wildlife conservation and the impacts it has is kind of a byproduct of us working with individuals who are passionate about this work.
Yes.
It's very interesting, and I'll give you another example of it. We went to visit one of our project leaders, and they're very passionate about the species they're saving. but because they're not literate, they never had access to the kind of resources I do and we do over here.
Yes.
He didn't really know much about climate change. So, and he wasn't sending his own children to school. So this was a huge issue because we're seeing these, this entire gaggle of children following us around, asking what we're doing, and we know that not one of them is going to school. And literacy is so important to any kind of conversation on conservation right now.
Yes.
So things like that are very jarring, It's easier when I'm in the office and I can be quite neutral about taking decisions and making notes and saying what needs to be done. But when you go out on your field visits and you're suddenly faced with the enormity of challenges around you, that can be a little disconcerting.
Yeah, conservation is complex, and especially in a country like ours where people live off wildlife and forests.
Yes.
But you must have had an aha moment or a happy moment in one of your field trips.
Of course.
Where, or perhaps the species you saw, it doesn't have to be just something you supported.
Yes.
But describe any moment in the wilderness which...
So earlier in March this year, I went to Arunachal Pradesh, to the rowing area. This is a place where you get the Hulok Gibbon, and I mentioned Onoko earlier, and it's still fresh in my mind because, so the Hulok Gibbon is kind of revered in the Idu-Mishmi culture, but also at the same time is considered a bad omen. Now the fragmentation of forests in this area means that now that there are farmlands which have forest islands in them.
Yes.
So, and in these forest islands you'll find gibbon families.
Yes.
There's no future for these families because they're no longer connected to the larger landscape. And because they live exclusively on treetops, they can't access the forest. So Onoko has collaborated with a local farmer named Ekato Mendo, and together, Ekato has now agreed to give a part of his farm back to the forest. And he's beginning to reforest and rewild this land for the gibbon family that stays there. And going then, I spent an entire morning just with this one family of gibbons, hearing them sing.
Yes, I think I've been to the same site because there's a tree on which there's an isolated family. It was when I went was a long time back, but obviously it is a problem in that area. And there are in Arunachal, there are dams coming up.
Yes.
Which will further fragment the forest, not just for the gibbons, but a lot of other wildlife.
I mean, the Dibang multi-purpose project it's shocking that we're going through with it. There was a lot of protest from the indigenous community initially.
Yes.
Allegedly, they were later bought out on many counts. But you're looking at the submersion of a very wild and vast and beautiful valley. And I drove some of that way down a road which didn't exist when I visited the first time, maybe 8 years ago.
But now there are roads everywhere.
Now there are roads, and you see these massive ancient trees lying roadside, chopped, and it's very heartbreaking. So
how do you maintain your optimism? I mean, we all look at these issues every day, and we all come back feeling sad and helpless. So how do you keep your optimism up?
I'm a swinging pendulum. One day I am so down in the dumps, and the next day I meet one of my project leaders, sends me a message saying with maybe a picture of what they just saw or an update from one of the kids in their community. And I think that really keeps me going. And I think that's what we have to do. We have to find community with others who are working in this space and talk about both our highs and our lows.
Okay, excellent. And if somebody wants to contribute to the Mud on Boots project, what can they hope to support, and where can they, find more details?
Okay, so you can find more details on the Mud on Boots project on the Sanctuary Asia website and on all of Sanctuary's social media pages. Of course, monetary donations are always welcome, but we've also been having some incredible collaborations with individuals who are volunteering their skills to us.
Yes.
So we've had several artists this year and graphic designers get in touch, and they're creating some beautiful resource materials for project leaders who are working with kids, as well as for project leaders who are working along vulnerable roads and areas where we need better signages. So then we have some filmmakers who got in touch and created films for us. There's a whole host of things you can do. It's just about finding the time and intent.
So if you want to help wildlife, it's not just financial contributions. You can go to the Sanctuary Asia website. You can look at the Mud on Boots page. You could contribute your time. You could contribute your skills. Cara Tejpal, more power to you.
Thank you
so much for joining.
Thank you, Bahar.